out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hey there, Tim.
Ryan.
Hey there.
Hi.
And hey there, everyone. Yes, you. Hey there, you. That's right, you. Welcome to Dismembering Horror, the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie,
And myself, Tim Aslin.
we dismember a horror film every week. We talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything we found interesting or noteworthy. We're trying to see films we haven't seen, horror films we haven't seen for a long time, ones that we're hoping we get something out of, whether they be good or bad. And the best way, I think, to get something out of it, regardless of how it is to digest it afterwards. Have a discussion with a friend and talk about exactly what I said we're going to talk about, what worked, what didn't work, and anything interesting or noteworthy.
I like digesting things.
Mm-hmm. And we're here for you to do just that, should you not have a horror fiend or friend to discuss these films with. So we are speaking of these films in the spirit as if you had just watched it with us. But if not, then... hey,
go watch it!
Then go watch it, or that's up to you.
Hit that pause button. Pause.
Oh, and I didn't say... I say welcome to. This is episode 76. We're on. Getting up there. Cool. I'm excited for these triple digits.
Oh my God.
Around the corner. And today we traveled back to 1987. Or this week, we traveled back to 1987.
What a year.
Yeah.
1987.
The only film I only ever think of that year with is, I think, Hellraiser came out that year, I want to say.
Wow.
I don't know.
I think, was that the year the Mets won the World Series? That was a big deal for me.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that was 86. I don't know. Or maybe it was the year that Indiana won the national championship.
Always seems like an in-between.
That's like all I remember from that age.
It
Sports.
Seems like an in-between year for some reason. How
Yeah.
it just looks on paper.
87. I bet something cool happened in our lives in 87. Oh, you weren't alive.
I was.
Oh, you were? By how long?
I was born in 86.
Oh, you were a little non-person.
I was a little tyke.
Wow. What grade was I in 87? Third grade? Ooh. If it was third grade, I went to Europe.
Do you remember seeing trailers for today's film Angel Heart?
Oh, probably not.
I wonder if your parents looked at the newspaper and were like, "Oh, hey, Robert De Niro new film." Remember?
They probably, knowing my parents of that time, they probably were like my mom was probably like, I don't like that Robert De Niro. He seems like a bad guy.
Especially done up to specifically look
Right.
like a bad guy.
Yeah.
She took one look at him sitting there with
He's
his
a
hair.
mobster. I don't like him.
Well, I don't blame her.
It's a weird impersonation of my mom. She doesn't do that at all. She's
around.
not like a little meh.
unless it comes to mobsters.
Right.
Well, we said the title of a film for this week. Tim, unless you got anything else, we're going to jump into...
You really opened up a whole part of my brain and memory of when you would want to see a movie, opening the newspaper, and just all you had to go on was the little black and white movie poster. If you're lucky. Sometimes it's just the name of the movie.
No,
that's all we had to go on?
I feel you. I felt that too.
Holy shit.
I was feeling that well as well. Those were fun days. I would just look at it just cuz it was fun.
Do you want to go see this or that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, Microcosmos. Look, it's grasshoppers wearing the sunglasses. Cool.
Wow. Wow.
Anyway,
I remember my friend being
there's a new Toy Story.
So excited for that movie.
Yeah. Not a film we're going to talk about on this show. We got our horror films to get through.
Well,
and we got one more.
That'll be an interesting conversation for today.
All right. Well, let's move things along so we can get to it then and watch the trailer for, as we said, from 1987 with that Robert De Niro fella. Here it is, Angel Heart.
The
The Exorcist, the possession of the human soul. Chinatown, the mystery of the human mind. Now.
Do you know what today is? Today is Wednesday. So anything can happen day.
My interest in Johnny is only in finding out if he's alive or if he's dead.
You want me to check it out?
Check it out.
Who are you?
I'm just a guy who was paid to snoop around. I'm gonna ask you again. Where is he? I don't know.
Harry Angel has been hired to solve more than a mystery.
He's dead, Mr. Angel. And if he isn't, he is to me.
Are you afraid?
Yeah, I'm afraid.
To find more than a killer.
Tim, and today is a Wednesday. Do you know what that means?
It's anything could happen day.
Exactly.
I didn't know that was a thing, but now we know.
And what is going to happen? First, our rating. Via our rating system, would Tim and I tell our individual selves, not you, but ourselves, to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it? Well, Tim. Well. Here we are.
I mean, I just stream it. I didn't like it that much.
There you have it, folks.
I don't know what else to say.
I hear
I
you.
mean, we'll get into it, but
I was honestly on the higher end stream it, but after looking at everything I wrote, I want to see it again in life. I don't. In a different circumstance, and I would rent it in order to do that. So I'm going to give it a rent it.
That's fair. I was super pleased when I realized it was on Prime and not
before we even watched. I mean, that's anything.
Like in hindsight, like when it finished, I was like, "Thank God."
You can be so mean.
Yeah, well, I like my $4. That $4 is going to go to something else.
Yeah, the next movie that we watch
Exactly.
that we totally hate.
Fuck. Yeah,
I don't know, man. Goosebumps was good.
Goosebumps was great.
Great. We can agree on that. Okay, stream it. For Tim, I was a higher stream it, but now I'll just say rent it. But I need to feel like I guess I feel like I need to see it again. This was, I could really see why this could be cool, like as just a, like why people maybe got into this as a, like it's like late night TBS. You like stumble across it, you're by yourself, it's late at night, and you just remember just this mood that's just really heavy throughout this whole movie. Mm-hmm. And that making its mark and that being your endpoint rather than a sort of, what I'd argue not intentionally supposed to add up gumshoe story.
Right. It's an interesting, this is slightly off topic, but when you say TBS, like, there's kind of, and maybe this isn't true. Somebody tell us if they agree with this, but do you feel like there was a slight distinction between like the late night TBS versus the late night TNT versus the late night USA?
I mean, I meant
like those are like
those,
the three big ones, right?
And that's exactly what
just
I mean.
in that realm. Yeah. Well, just you saying that made me go, well, was it a TBS or was it a TNT or a USA?
A lot of movie nostalgia thinking back to late night, those three channels, and looking at ads in newspapers.
Did you have HBO when you were a kid?
No.
Yeah, me neither. This actually feels more like something that would be on at my friend Rumsey's place because he had HBO and we would put it on thinking that we might see a boob.
Yeah, Rumsey at HBO.
Right.
Rumsey?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, something about it being Robert De Niro makes it seem HBO. Like,
yeah.
Like 90s HBO.
Yeah. And the late 80s sort of post-satanic panic vibes.
Yeah.
But it's like they're still trying to hang on to, like, ooh.
Well,
I guess it was still kind
No,
of
this
around.
to me was I separate as far as flavor, vibe, all that, satanic panic, and like voodoo occult. You know, this was very much this was a voodoo occult. This wasn't.
That's true. That's true.
This wasn't like Satan worshippers kind of thing.
No, I agree. I totally agree. I think in the what's the word, in the sort of ostensible sense, ostensibly speaking, from the like semi-removed, not knowing the story, I think that it is in it's I don't know it they're trying to pull people in because it has that wash of, it could be satanic panic, it could be voodoo. It's just general occultism is the marketing, I think, ploy in a way.
Speaking of that story, would you like to help us out with our next section, and
Sure.
which is a summary?
Yes. I do have to say that people with the first name Harry and the last name that's a noun is always really distracting for me.
I mean, all the names were distracting in a way. We got Harry Angel, Louis Cipher, sorry.
Yeah.
Louis Cipher, Epiphany Proudfoot, and Toots Sweet.
And Johnny Favorite. Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't set the stage, I don't know what does.
Well, that was part of my...
You know what I was really surprised by? I had no clue we were going into 1955.
No, me either. I love that.
At all.
Yeah, that was
so
cool.
that was a pleasant surprise. So we're in 1955.
Yeah.
New York City. You know, he's a PI, but a couple times he says he isn't, so I guess he just doesn't want to be outed. So he's a PI, Harry Angel, Mickey Rourke. He gets hired for a job like every hard-boiled detective story ever. Some rich guy comes along and says, hey, I want you to do a job. And he's like, well, that's not really what I do. And then he, for some reason, agrees to do it. That's like every detective novel I've ever read.
As Tim would say, classic.
Classic setup. Here we go. So the job is this eccentric rich dude, Robert De Niro, Louis Cipher, hires him to find some guy because the guy owes him a debt. And the guy is named Johnny Favorite, and he was a singer, like crooner, and he's disappeared. He was like in the war, and then he wasn't in the war, and then he was a crooner, and then he lost his mind, I guess, sort of, and then got institutionalized, and then disappeared, and Robert De Niro wants to find him for some vague, maybe malevolent reason.
He owes him a debt.
Yeah. Doesn't they call it something like a life debt, or is it something... There's like a qualifier to the debt he uses, and I can't remember what it is. Anyway, so, you know, like every detective novel, it's like twists and turns of Mickey Rourke going and following leads and dead ends, and that leads to another thing and a dead end.
You know, he's underlying names in a phone book, you know, all that good stuff. As soon as that happened, I thought, Tim is paying attention to this in a way that I just am not.
Right. And so he gets eventually down to New Orleans.
Yeah, it's split up kind of half and half. First half, slummy New York, Coney Island.
I guess it's important to say that the first couple people that he tracks down, or the first person in particular that he gets a lead from, is this doctor who like fixed the books on Johnny Favorite's institutionalization, and then that doctor ends up killing himself, in quotations.
Yeah.
And then he goes to New Orleans?
Sure.
Or is there one more death before that?
I think that was the only
New York death. Okay. So he does get chased in New York, kind of inexplicably. We don't really know why, but he gets chased. So the exciting chase scene. And we know early on that he's having kind of memory / I don't know how you describe it. Things that he sees spark something in his mind. Mm-hmm. for example, he sees a woman washing a wall of blood, and that sort of like he kind of goes in and out of like the real version of that and like the version in his head of that. It's sort of dreamish or sort of memory-ish or sort of hallucination-ish. Jesus. Anyway, so we know something's up in his brain. Then he goes down to New Orleans, tracks down some leads. Every lead that he gets to, that person ends up dead.
Yep.
Eventually, is there more that I should say about that? Not really.
No, he meets...
Eventually, this all leads to him sort of wrapping around and realizing, you know, the big twist.
Yes. Which is, Tim, he is Johnny Favorite.
Right. And it was a deal with the devil. Louis Cipher is Lucifer, which just makes my head hurt. It's too on the nose for me.
Yeah, but I didn't see it coming.
I didn't either, but like the second it was said, because I just didn't hear his name the first time.
I mean, it's...
Because they just kept saying Mr. Cipher.
Right, but it's great because it was like... I mean, we can get to... Because it was like, you know, I love puns, but especially the ones you don't see coming, where it's
Sure.
like, yeah, it's stupid, but it's great because it worked.
I think
it's like, how much fun is it to, like, usually we're just so ahead of things like that when they happen. To have one of these stupid little, like, anagram things or sound-alike things actually work on me was just so fun.
I think, yeah. Oh, let's talk about it later. So the deal is Johnny Favorite cut a deal with the devil to have a career, you know, sold his soul to have this crooner career, and then decided he wanted to take back the deal. And so he goes on the run. And in order to disappear, he had to actually sacrifice somebody else and steal that person's body so that he can't be found. So he's a different person. And the way he does that is through some black magic ritual, whatever, where he cuts that person's heart out and eats the heart. And then I guess his soul goes into that guy's body and he has no heart or something. Mm-hmm. And so he did that 12 years ago. And so for 12 years, Lucifer has been trying to find him and finally finds Harry Angel, who is the body.
Yeah.
See, this is whatever. Apparently, Harry Angel, the body that Johnny Favorite soul went into, doesn't know that he's Johnny Favorite.
Because there was the whole amnesia thing, apparently, like, where after he got out of the war.
Right. I remember hearing that, but I didn't connect the dots. But okay, cool, great.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so, yeah. All right. That's kind of cool. We should have been clearer. So Harry Angel or whatever, Mickey Rourke has a nice, solid flip out.
Yeah.
One of the best flip outs.
Yeah.
Because he knows who he is.
Yeah.
But, well, he does now.
Right. One of those stories of someone who starts rock bottom and then only goes further. That's their arc.
It's so true.
Which is always, I think, satisfying.
Yeah, for sure. God, that's it.
Great. All right. So summary. Now let's
the end. There is no like conclusion.
No, he goes to hell.
He goes to hell. Yeah, takes the elevator to hell.
Yeah, it's his own doing now. That Robert De Niro's whole plot was to sort of open up he could only step through to his own hell.
Yeah, it seems so. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our first section. Not our first section, but our first section with its own lead-in intro.
Wow.
What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I mean, I already kind of said this, but the pervasive sense of just foreboding in it's just murky. It feels like that. Not the God, what's the word? Sorry, just lost me. Not gumshoe. Noir. You know, just that heavy atmosphere. But just to combine that with then you sort of get throughout teases of the occult and supernatural, where it is just this like periphery of another world. Like
very much so.
Chicken foot is used, there are references made, but he never really like, you know, thinks much of it or jumps on it really as clues, because as he always says, oh, I'm from Brooklyn. You know, I love that comparison of the two. But then just how that all of a sudden it sort of sets up this subtle, like not subtle, sudden turn into like the supernatural, you know, where once we get to that sex scene, which was just the standout scene of the movie, that was so good.
For sure.
It was so good. It's just when everything as far as his visions and what's real and what's not just sort of all hits the fan finally. But to have this mood sort of be percolating and all build up to this thing was super cool and satisfying, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, you see what I mean there?
With what? Liking it?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Those aspects.
You know, I think maybe there's sort of a caveat to why I'm a stream. It's because I don't dislike the movie as a movie, but like for me it's just it's a different thing. It's a detective noir with like a sprinkle of supernatural to me. And so it's very hard for me to be like, hell yeah, horror movie. And then so what that does is effectively it makes me think of other noir films, detective films, and it doesn't quite stand up to them for me.
Well,
that's
why I say need to see it again, because in retrospect, then it is all a supernatural occult movie. You know?
Yeah.
And as I said, like that always was the wash over it all. Like you could tell there was always something up or off.
You know why? Whatever. It's because you keep cutting back to those wall fans.
Yes.
And that alone sets up that something's up. It just is a weird device that fucking works.
That was neat. Those you're right.
Because the second we go back to it, I think maybe the third time we go back to it, I remember going, uh-oh. Like we're not, like something's up. Like there's a reality issue.
Yeah.
Because why are we going back to that? Like,
it was so cool. That made me feel that way when it was going one direction slowly, then started going another direction.
Yeah.
Just enough to make you feel unsettled.
You know what it made me think of is it's the same kind of vibe as Jacob's Ladder. Have you seen Jacob's Ladder?
Not recently enough, no.
It's that same like something's off. And our narrator or our lead person is a little unreliable.
Yeah, because he's so stressed out.
Right. And he's like, well, in Jacob's Ladder, he's straight up seen monsters and shit. And it's actually, I want to watch that movie again too. Anyway, so that unsettling, otherworldly, like something's messed up with the perception of reality in our hero, for lack of a better word. That vibe is fun. I'm like, it's really pleasing to me.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the biggest thing overall that worked for me. But it was just in our viewing of it, it was just hard to like fully feel like the movie was allowing itself to cast, or me allowing it to cast its spell. So that's why I say like I want to watch it again. No offense, by myself, and like just late at night and see. You know,
why you were distracted by me? What was I doing?
You want to know?
Yeah.
You were farting every 5 minutes.
That's fair. I had a little gas problem.
And the sex scene, though, how I said it all came to a head with that, like so cool how we go, okay, drops. And it's not just, it wasn't great because of it like as a sex scene, but just what it was as a scene as far freaky. As that's when everything came to a head of the... it's been set up. This is a leaky hotel room in New Orleans he's staying in, and all of a sudden those water leaks turn to blood, and it's just like the sex itself is like, oh wait, is this like too violent, crossing a line here? You're not sure because it's showing two different things.
Yeah, like that dissolving into we no longer know what's real. Mm-hmm. Is really well done in that moment, because I kept thinking we're gonna come out of this and she's just gonna be like dead. He's gonna have, ripped her head off or something. And then it doesn't really do that. And then it kind of does, but
if you've listened to other episodes, or Tim knows this, that what's real, what's not is kind of my favorite thing. And whenever that's in a horror movie, we talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, major points. And overall, I thought held together with really great acting. I loved everyone in it. They were all committed. They all like fit the tone so well. As I said, like Mickey Rourke going from, already down and out, just to crazy. Robert De Niro, where he's kind of doing less, but he like holds a lot of a presence still. And just that standout scene of him eating the egg, so good. Where he just pulls off that kind of, that monologuing, where we know, it just works so well, where we know this guy knows more is up, or has some sort of presence of evil, or however he's connected in the world. Turns out he's the devil. That's why. But that's there in his performance and his appearance too, which then finally leads to like his fingernails are longer and he finally lets his man bun down and he's sitting there with his cane and flowing hair.
So envious of his man bun.
But just loved him in that. And then, all the supporting characters too. You just buy into it. Like, like the racist cops down there just felt like, brought that right.
The two goons that beat Mickey Rourke up.
Lisa Bonet, so good.
Yeah.
Really sells like, I don't know, just felt very lived in.
You know who I really liked, and she's only in one scene, is Mickey Rourke's girlfriend, in that it really set this sort of tone of the era. Like her hair, do you remember this? Like
at the beginning?
It's so short, yeah. Oh. He goes back to his apartment. It's the only time we're ever in his apartment.
Right.
His girlfriend is there. She's done some like legwork research for him to track some stuff down.
Right.
And they have this kind of sexy, they're both getting undressed and he's kind of preoccupied and she's giving exposition. But it's a really smart... Actually, this movie does this a few times. They are really good about doing what some books call the Pope in the pool.
I noticed that so clearly when it was him at Coney Island talking to the woman in the ocean.
Yep. So the Pope in the pool, for anybody who doesn't know, is a term that I think, who was it?
Sid Cat. Sid Cat. I just combined them. Sid Field, Save the Cat.
Yeah, he came up with to describe how to make exposition scenes visually interesting, right? So it's a reference to what?
Situationally interesting. Yeah. It was a reference to some movie where
I think it's getting Godfather 3.
It's where they're getting exposition and it's a pope swimming in a swimming pool doing laps.
Right, a thing that we generally don't associate with the Pope. Anyway, so they did it a few times in this. It's pretty good.
And that's what it's, the Pope in the pool, that's what like this kind of structure is about for me. Like one of my favorite movies, Inherent Vice, it's all just the Pope in the pool, the movie. You aren't supposed to be able to follow what's going on. And this movie gets to that point, and maybe that sort of transition could be handled a little more intentionally. Like I can see if you're really, like and enjoy the sort of mystery, putting together the cruise aspect, that just to be, like how Audition does it so well, where once things go out the door, they really go out the door. That's how I viewed this, and why I enjoyed it so much was because at a certain point when we were like, who are these guys chasing them?
Right.
Rather than being frustrated by it, I was just put off in that horror movie, what's going on sense.
Right.
So anyway,
it's just all madness.
Yeah, that's kind of a ramble starting from somewhere else, Pope in the pool, but that is what, say.
But
it's fun
to backtrack kind of just a touch of where I was coming from, why that even came up, is that in that scene where we meet the girlfriend, her casting and her styling, like they styled her hair in a very specific way, and I think, makeup and whatever. But it really suddenly, even though we've already established that we're in 55, I suddenly was like, oh, this is what people in New York in 55 dressed like and looked like.
Yeah.
It really felt like a different thing, like a specific thing.
And it was cool because as another overall effect of just when it was set, 55 is still connected to just style-wise, flavor-wise, look what it, the 40s, wartime.
Definitely.
how everything is. And just that too, as far as the pervasive mood of just knowing, it's you were in the war. Oh, were you in the service? Just that as this downer, depressing, but authentic setting lended a lot to the film as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's Jacob's Ladder is sort of the Vietnam version of this.
It's on my Shudder watch list.
Interesting.
I know. I need to watch it.
They're very similar in that sort of what the broader storytelling is, kind of the tools that it's using and the commentary that it has about like post-war, feelings. Because I think that's a big part of this story, even though it's not super explicit. It's not like on the nose, but it very much is like a story of the horrors of war,
or dealing with the trauma.
Exactly.
Whole story is someone who's
they want to escape their who they were.
They're selling their soul to the devil in going down the devil's path, post-war as a way to deal with the trauma.
I mean, I imagine too that the novel just really digs into a lot of that stuff, as you would expect. So that's cool.
I already kind of mentioned this, but just as far as all the details that added up to this feel of like, the chicken foot appears in the bathroom and then just all the objects when he goes to Margaret in New Orleans, goes to her apartment. Then we see, from his point of view, spying on the voodoo ceremony. And then, just again, I already said, but that just juxtaposed to get with his like, I'm from Brooklyn refrain.
I'm an atheist.
Yeah, I just love that as just these two wholly different worlds just sort of put up against each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always fun, too, to watch this kind of, I don't know, hard-boiled guy, I guess, for lack of a better term, get just sent through the ringer. Like by the end, he's cut up and beat up and like dog bit and ragged as hell and sweaty and wet and
on top dirty. Of that, there's supernatural stuff going on that he's got to deal with. And that's what really...
God, what a bummer.
That's what I really love.
I mean, if it wasn't enough, his ankle got bit so hard by that dog.
But just, it's cool because it keeps it at a fun level where, I always like... I only saw it the once in theaters, the Skeleton Key, but using this... this setting where I always want to say like, I want more kind of like Bayou New Orleans horror films kind of thing. But I could see it's kind of a tricky, careful line you got to balance.
Sure.
But one way that to do it well is to sort of use these details and the setting, but don't let us jump into it too far. Which I thought this was at a really good level of.
Yeah.
In order to do it at all.
Yeah, and like... I don't know. I'm trying not to say things that I didn't like. Hang on a second. What was I going to say? I think... I don't know how to say this without going into what didn't work, so I'm not even going to say it.
I mean, if you need to say it in order to get to what did work, I think it's allowed.
Well... I'm not sure what I'm getting at. I think what you're saying, the general setting, vibe, and environment of the like poor, whatever you call that. I mean, where Lisa Bonet lives, the poor black neighborhood.
Yeah,
like out in they're living in shacks essentially. It's touched in a way that never feels exploitative or like shitty,
because they always feel like the ones who know what's up and are in control in a sense, like you're in our territory. You know?
And even I think part of what helps it is his performance around it is pretty like I think in other cases and in lesser hands, so to speak, you would see the scene where like he comes in and he gets hassled by a couple of black dudes and then he kicks their asses and then he's like, no, I'm going to say what I'm going to say and do it, and be very like, bleh.
Yeah.
And I've seen that scene a bunch And I've like actually one of the books I'm reading right now has some scenes like that where I'm like, oh God.
Well,
and like, yeah, that's probably how it was.
That's what I like about his character. He's kind of open to whomever. It's only if you personally cross him does he give a crap.
Yeah. So that was handled well, I think, and it didn't feel gross and cringy when it could have.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it was a... Oh, never mind. Sorry.
At a certain point too, the directing really struck me as where I was like, oh, there is interesting good directing here.
Definitely.
Like, and when I first noticed that, I guess, rather than leave it as a thing of note, this is directed by Alan Parker, who I know from doing the Wall movie.
The Pink Floyd really Wall?
Cool. Yeah, the Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Interesting.
And
Sir Alan William Parker. Wow.
The musical Fame. But then also the only other one I know him from Midnight Express, which is super similar. I haven't seen Mississippi Burning, but I hear it's good.
That's a hard one.
Cool.
It's good, but it's heavy as fuck.
But what I first perked up was when he just sort of enjoying the style of just the choices and doing things that were, not just super by the book, was when he leaves the junkie dude alone and says, I'm going to go get a cheeseburger, coffee or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's alone. Mickey Rourke's alone in the coffee. Angel is alone getting coffee. It's just he's alone in the diner. It's just this long zoom in just on him. And it just is really affecting somehow, in that kind of what I want from a film way, where it doesn't just make me go, oh, okay, yeah, this, but it just conjures kind of meaning in a mood that's not too specific, but is there.
Certainly, like I think the mood aspect of this film is probably one of the bigger pluses. And
same, but also, if you're just feeling like there's metaphor there to dig your teeth into too, should you, your mind be going down that route. Mm-hmm. Same with, similarly, those recurring shots of those like straight on exterior shots of buildings with like the single lit window, kind of like sort of those tying into like the fan shots you were talking about.
Well, the fan is in that shot. Yeah. That lit window, the lower half is one of those fans.
But it just made me feel kind of almost like it was like a Tim Burton Batman in that way.
No, I agree.
Where it's just, none of this is ever, do I ever have the safety of reality to sort of step down on. It's all just sort of like this real New York that humans have created and invented is just like such a comic book thing in place.
I totally agree. I mean, the opening shot is a nighttime alleyway. And it's at an angle, so you're not looking straight down the alley. We're sort of on one side of the alley.
Got a cat meowing at a
cat
dog.
And a dog, right? But those static shots of the alleyway and the way that it's lit is so noir comic book.
Yeah.
Like, it's beautiful.
And what's neat was
smoke kind of coming up. Like, it's just so good.
Right. Especially, and to see that successfully done in color is always like bonus points. Good jobs. And then similarly, all that look of when, I think there's shots of it throughout, but really culminates the ending of the elevator to hell, which is just the last elevator in the world you want to be on as far as how it is, where it's like
very
in a warehouse, it's metal, it's open air.
Yep.
It's just, you feel the clunks of it. You don't know how far it goes down, but it's effectively, as an elevator to hell should be.
Yeah.
It feels like it could be going down forever. But just all those shots, so it combined with, I'll get to, the score actually worked for me too, Tim.
Yeah.
I thought lurid was a good word for it. The saxophone, where it kind of felt like that Blade Runner soundtrack of that, where in one aspect it could feel dated, but I don't know. It just works for me as far as this being sad and, as I said, lurid, languid.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so combined with all the imagery I just described, really, really worked.
I mean, yeah, Blade Runner's an interesting...
It's another noir, 80s noir.
What would you call that? Comparable?
Yeah.
Something? A comp?
Comparison.
Yeah, that's interesting. They're very close in a lot of ways, huh?
At a certain point, it was just like, we're kind of guessing something that the twist isn't at least in the wheelhouse of at this point, but just the fact that everyone he's meeting is just getting killed at a certain point, it just became like fun for me of like, okay, like, I don't know, rather than doing something half-assed, I was glad that that was sort of a propellant at a certain point, because I don't know, it was almost interesting meta thing in that, like, it's a hard-boiled detective film, like, you expect that where the character's going is just where the deaths are gonna be. But then at a certain point, and, but always in the sense of you are detecting, you are not, somehow to blame for all this. But that's why it was just kind of fun. Then once it got to where it's like, no, what, like 4 or 5 people happen to be dying? Dude, you're, maybe you should stop worrying about...
You might be the problem here.
It does have something to do with you.
It is cool. That's actually a really good point, because that construct in good detective stories is often like you track down a lead and you think, oh, this is going to be the thing that kind of breaks it open for me, and then shit goes sideways, and either when you get there, the person you're looking for is already dead because the bad guy or whatever is a step ahead of you.
Yeah. Or
you get there and shit goes sideways because the bad guy gets there at the same time and you can't get the information, and then the person ends up dead. And so you're always on the run because you're like, shit, now this looks like I did it. Because they're taking that exact construct and just being like, except it's him.
Yeah, the bad guy,
which is great,
is the twist that's coming.
Yeah.
Which I gotta say too, like, this is another reason why I think I just want to see it again down the line, not anytime soon. But how do I put this? Like, nowadays that twist of, it was them all along, basically, it just feels so overdone and hackneyed. But when this film was made, I mean, it's happened a lot before, but I do think, like, for this story, it works. It's appropriate. It is the story that should be told. Like, it was made in an era when you didn't need, like, to know that could be the possible twist people are saying and then have to do something else.
Yeah.
So just being able to see this again and being able to take it all at face value rather than sort of looking at it from the 2020 perspective.
Right.
I think I could, really get behind it as far as the twist in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I sort of lost my train of thought.
The twist.
Oh, I was going to say that in spite of, I think maybe halfway through around, I kind of caught on to that possibility that he's looking for himself.
Yeah, ditto.
It didn't bother me in a lot of, like, in other scenarios, and I think when we see it in the hackneyed way now, often I'm like,
yeah,
well, now I don't care.
But
in this, it didn't have that effect,
because it's still, you're wondering how it's going to get there.
Very much so.
And there's still, and because it involves the supernatural, it feels like it's done on a level where it's not just like, okay, cut and dry, okay, that was the twist. There's still an element of mystery and unknown that makes it, like, work in the sort of what's real, what's not horror movie sense for me, as far as that the twist helps support.
I think that's really important. The sort of double misdirect aspect of things is a thing that, if done right, can be really effective.
Yeah.
So, good job.
Good
job, Alan.
The part that really scared me in it, as far as it's a pure, like, horror scare, was it was like the shot of this sudden shot of, like, it was like a monkey, but not. It was like a stuffed.
Yeah, that's right.
It was like a stuffed mammalian thing.
Yeah.
And like set to, I think there were street drums or something like that.
Maybe the tap dancing?
Yeah, we're accompanying it. Anyway, that just gave me quite the jolt, and it was just, I don't know.
Was it as much as
cool.
The laughing from Goosebumps?
No, that will always be the biggest scare in any film that we watch. That, and then also just sort of, I don't know, things like that in this movie. As I already said, the details of the voodoo stuff, and also just like from the get-go, you have this sort of sad church with a woman cleaning this blood stain on the wall. That just all and lent itself to this mood, but made it also feel like, you know, in the horror sense that I'd say, you know, Seven is as well. Remind me of that. And then as far as, sort of what I was saying in the there still being some element of what exactly, you know, this is all the devil's game and we're just a part of it and can't actually take any comfort in knowing exactly what it was. I liked that his plan had something to do with, at least, again, we don't really understand it, but having this guy, Angel, you know, be the catalyst of his own undoing. There's something very, right. I use this phrase a lot too, snake eating its tail, of having a detective detect himself.
Right.
Right. I just love that.
I mean, it's a cool metaphor, or maybe it's not even a metaphor. It's just a cool thing.
Yeah.
Because all it really is we as humans have the, you know, ability, I guess, or the opportunity for self-exploration and self-realization, right? And we choose a lot of the time to go down that path or not, right? Like, we all know lots of people who ignore a lot of things in their own about themselves and just don't want to deal with it, and that can often lead to not so great outcome. But you know, self-exploration is hard and often painful.
Right. So to have someone who's so hard-headed, to put them in a trap where that very hard-headedness, rather than getting them to avoid looking at themselves, makes them go on a literal hunt for themselves. It's great.
Well, and it builds to an appropriately sort of cathartic actualization, even though the outcome is not something he wanted.
Yeah.
It's big. And I gotta say, Mickey Rourke is amazing in this.
Yeah.
His flip out. I remember just sort of, he's just chewing it up. Like, it's so full force flip out.
It's just him though, too.
I know. There is nothing like hedged about it.
No.
He just goes full force, dives in and flips. And I'm like, I really, really fucking respect that kind of performance, because I think you could very easily be the person in this type of movie and think, oh, well, it's this type of movie, so, you know, that's inappropriate or something. You know, like some justification to hedge on a full-on flip out.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's not that guy. Like, that's not who Mickey Rourke is as an actor. He's full force all the time, which I love.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Just to, like, I mean, it's the actor's job. I guess we should expect this, but especially when it's, you know, I can be grateful to an actor when it requires also like a supernatural leap where they're just like, I believe this.
Yeah, definitely.
And on this level of movies, leading to that kind of flip out, very satisfying.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That about does it for what worked for me, Tim.
Me too.
All right. We'll move on to our next section then. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Where to start?
I mean, I could start with the one thing that I have.
Okay.
And then probably just play the devil's advocate.
Oh my God.
You gotta say.
I see what you did there. I see it.
Only big thing didn't work for me, which is kind of weird because it's not the movie, but it is the title. Don't like it.
It's horrible.
Angel Heart.
The book was called Falling Angel, which isn't really any better.
Just Angel Heart just feels stupid saying.
You know what it makes? It's stupid.
Yeah.
It just is bad. That's a fucking awful title.
Yeah. And see, again, this is why, like, I had, so also what, kind of similarly, but not as egregiously, just looking at the names of all the characters.
Hate it.
Right. but now that I know what they are, it's like, okay, just ignore the title, ignore like the character names I was fine with by the end of it, because it all worked in the end.
Sure.
But still, this title, like, I just got to watch this movie without thinking about this title. I don't want to say, oh, have you seen Angel Heart? Oh yeah, Angel Heart it's it's working against itself.
Too easily confused with the Jean-Claude Van Damme classic Lionheart, where he elbows a guy 7 times in a row.
That title sounds good, Lionheart.
It's good for what it is.
This one, just something.
And then Louis Gossett Jr. at one point is like, Lionheart! And he does the elbow smash.
It's just Angel Heart, just lacks poetry. I don't know.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, even just the Lucifer thing.
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that and what worked for me, but because I did mention that in sort of the my review at the head of what I liked about it. But for the record, that was fun. I just how satisfying to have something like that actually like work.
Yes,
actually get me.
I get where you're coming from. I'm not sure why it bothers me so much.
Because it got you.
Maybe that's what it is, but it's just I can't. My eyes don't roll far enough back into my head when it was revealed.
But
like,
it worked.
Louis Cipher. Oh. It is a very that's like the dumb shit the devil would do kind of feel. So I'm okay with it, but
especially this one.
Yeah,
as played by Robert De Niro eating his egg.
Louis Cipher. Louis Cipher. It doesn't even actually like. I don't know.
It's a homophone.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not even like a pun. I mean, it is a pun.
It's a homophone.
But Cipher has its own connotation. It's sort of a double something, right? Because Cipher being like a riddle. I think that's what maybe pisses me off. It's like it's too much in one.
All right, what about other things that maybe didn't work for you here?
Okay.
Because that's pretty small.
I think the plottiness at times I didn't like. And specifically, and I think this is why you have a couple of these quote unquote like action scenes where he's just getting inexplicably chased by somebody. Like he didn't do anything to deserve getting chased out of that first church. Like he did nothing. Like he didn't piss anybody off. He didn't say anything. He wasn't inappropriately there. And he's having a vision, right? Like he's walking up to the woman in black who's sitting in the row of chairs. And then 2 black guys just attack him. And it just made me kind of feel like, what the fuck? Like, what do we, I mean, it's fun, I guess. It's an action scene or whatever, but it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like just find a little reason, like just a 1-line reason and I'd be okay with it.
I feel like I need to see it again to choose sides on it because maybe there's a reason there that's perceived once you kind of know the bigger picture of it all.
I mean, he picked up that lady's hat in the, he saved the cat when he's like the morning.
But just knowing
MO
this is all the devil's orchestration.
Yeah, that it's all a way to get him further down the path. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I get how, at the same time when you're watching it a first time, it should not detract. But it didn't bother me. I was just like, something is there. There's a mystery here that we're going to figure out about, and this is just part of it.
I think what it felt like to me a little bit is that it was an unjustified attempt to do Chinatown at times. And so like in Chinatown, those things they all wrap up because it exists in reality. It's like grounded in the real world. This is sort of saying, well, let's do it felt like do some of those same things, but since we're supernatural, we don't have to just explain anything.
Yeah.
And that's what gave me that kind of like, I don't really know if I'm on board with that. Like it feels like kind of a cheap justification. So a couple of those, I mean, even the lack of, and maybe this is just because I missed it, but the other dudes down in New Orleans who chase him and beat the shit out of him, we both were like, who the fuck are these guys? And it's almost okay to not know. They could just be dudes who don't like that some New Yorker is down there. And like, I could almost get behind that. But what it actually was then undercut that as a possibility because they were hired thugs by the black magic woman's father. Mm. And there's never anything to connect that thread or to give us that clue early on.
I guess for me it was important at that point in the movie just to sort of this, when you have this hard-headed gumshoe character, just something that's challenging him as far as you think like you are following these clues and just you maybe know it's up. You don't.
Yeah. Well, I think what pisses me off about it is that I always am annoyed when, I guess, semi-third act or end of second act characters appear. Mm-hmm. And so her father, we didn't know, like, we find out that he's the guy who broke Johnny what is his name? Favorite out of the institution. He's the guy who gave the institution the $25,000. That all comes out in the conversation, but like, how did he even find that guy?
I mean, I don't care
all of that annoys me.
That I don't care about, but I could see. I agree. What could have been done better is like give us a little more as far as what his perspective is. Like what works for this movie is, I think, having a lot of realistic performances, super grounded. So when you just get chased, you aren't going to say, "Who are you guys?" kind of thing. But but at the same time, to accomplish whatever that would be accomplishing somehow would be helpful.
I think the only...
like, where is he at? Where is Angel at?
The only thing that I would have needed, honestly, for the father of the black magic lady is for us to have met him and been lied to about who he is.
Yeah.
If we had gotten that, then when he goes back to him, because he tracks him down eventually, then when he goes back to him, he thinks he's got something on him. He's like, "I know what you're up to. I figured it out." And then the reversal of having that guy being like, "Well, actually, you haven't figured it out."
Right.
And here's why.
Yes, I like that.
That would be more, apropos, I guess, to this type of story for me. And it's pretty minor, so I almost get why they don't bother.
Yeah.
But it would help so much for me in that scene, because that's the pivotal scene. That's where he really starts to crack and go, "Oh, shit."
Yeah.
Like, there's something bigger here, and I don't want to look at it.
I guess didn't bother me as much. I didn't see that as pivotal. I saw it as, like, that annoyance overall is just minuscule in my overall enjoyment and engagement.
It pissed Mickey Rourke off because he flipped the fuck out of that table.
Oh, right.
Which I love a good table flip.
You got anything else?
The appearance with special appearance by Robert De Niro kind of just, I think, is weak. Like, I don't know. I don't like it.
Can you just see Robert De Niro's, "Yes, Mr. De Niro will appear in your film"?
Yeah. Yeah, his people.
Yeah. But he wants it to be special.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something weird about that.
I mean, I agree with you both these things, but they're just so small picture for me.
Yeah, they're pretty small. Okay, so the bigger one for me, I guess, in a broad sense is, well, there's two. There's a lot of just Mickey Rourke and whoever he's talking to just having a conversation.
I was feeling that in the New York stuff more so. Like as sort of fun and Pope in the Pooly as it was, that can kind of that charm of whatever Pope happens to be in whatever pool, it kind of wears thin pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the upside of those scenes is literally Mickey Rourke knowing that there's not a whole lot going on in the scene, that it's just a dialogue scene, and watching him find ways to make the scene interesting.
Yeah.
Like when he gets the doctor in the kitchen the first time he's questioning somebody, it's the doctor in the doctor's own kitchen, right? The morphine addict. And like Mickey Rourke's all over that scene. Like he's fucking getting up, sitting down, grabbing the guy, hugging him, grabbing his tie, like grabbing his face. He's just fucking all over the place.
For me,
and that's pretty great.
Like these scenes that are just the questioning a person scenes, like they are I think Sinfield termed the fun and games. They
Yes,
are the
very
meat and
much so.
bones of these types of stories.
Yeah.
So just in that sense, they overall, like, I was cool with it. Like, maybe like cut one of them out or shorter could have helped me
Right.
with the first half pacing, but I'm kind of like, whatever. Or maybe, you know, just kind of better casting on who he's interacting. Because a lot of times, like, again, why I love Inherent Vice so much, it's like not at all about like the actual mystery. It's just about the charm and the sort of that mood and the feel of that kind of exchange and that kind of structure.
All right. Yeah.
So, you know, the fact that it was at Coney Island and you have these weird people who are in the
I love
the
all
off-summers.
that.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that irked me, I guess, is I guess it's necessary, but like I just got a little uncomfortable with the Lisa Bonet gratuity.
I mean,
But it's serving a story purpose.
Yeah.
Which is good because it's basically he shouldn't be tempted by this. She's what, 16, I think she says?
17.
And he's like licking his chops, and I'm like, but it is story
right,
relevant.
I mean,
so
but Tim, that's not even the short of it. It's that she is his granddaughter.
no, she's his daughter.
Right. Oh, right. The little kid is his
The little
granddaughter.
kid is her grandson, daughter. I don't know which.
Yeah. So that's like that level of messed upness that is, I don't know, again, puts it in horror for me too.
I agree, because it ultimately leads to this very what's the Korean film?
That we watched?
No. Just famous Korean film with the guy who gets locked in.
Old Boy.
Thank you. It's that same awfulness.
Yeah.
Like the holy shit, what did I do kind of thing. I just, unfortunately, it was left up to us to feel that.
I don't know,
what I
because
mean?
the sex scene is when it all goes at like, there is something wrong here.
No doubt. And I love that. But I don't think, I mean, it's hard because it's murky, but like, yeah. I think I wanted, and maybe it's supposed to be in his performance of like, I know who I am, but like, I think I needed a little more of seeing him have the revelation of what he did. But the movie's a little too, there are too many layers to hone in on just that. Whereas in Old Boy, it is just that. That is the point of the revenge.
Yeah.
Is to get him to fuck his daughter. So in this, it's more of just like, it's kind of living in this murkiness of like, oh shit, everything went bad.
I mean, it's also, I don't know, you know, where he says, oh, I'm from Brooklyn. It's kind of... it kind of like, it feels like his character, like, rather than me being mad at the movie for his, like, you know, luring at her or whatever, it feels like, no, I'm mad at like the character.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Yeah. It's a very fine line for me between like sort of exploitive, gratuitous, you know, sexualization, and especially with younger women. I'm always just like, ugh.
Well, it's supposed to be his daughter. It's like,
I know. Yeah, I know.
Oh, it's a horror movie, man.
Yep. So, but that's really it for me.
All
Everything
right.
else was pretty solid.
Let's move on to our final big section. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
I'd just like to note, once again, Robert De Niro's hair is so glorious. I'm so envious. All I could think of was like, one day I'd like to be there.
You say you're growing your hair out, Tim, but it seems like it's always only getting shorter. Like you're always cutting it.
I'm not cutting it. I haven't cut it in 8 months.
Why does it look like it gets shorter?
I don't know. Maybe your brain is...
It's like growing off. Fuller, not long. I don't know.
Not growing very fast, I guess.
All right. This one had some fun. You know, when they exist, I like to... Just because he's a fun writer, not we agree or disagree with him, but Roger Ebert, while he was still alive, sure. I like some quotes from his review. because, maybe if you weren't as crazy about it, I'm curious to hear your take on them too, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
But he starts off his review. After everything is all over... Wait, is this the beginning of it? Yes. After everything is all over and the dust has settled and the blood has dried, it is possible to unsort the plot of Angel Heart and see that it's really fairly simple. But it doesn't feel that way at the time. It has the unsettled logic of a nightmare in which nothing fits and everything seems inevitable, and there's a lot of arrows in the air and they are all flying straight at you. I like that.
That's pretty solid, actually. It's a good point, because he's right. We didn't really say this explicitly, but the dreamlike sense throughout. Mm-hmm. There were a bunch of times when I was like, oh man, this whole thing may just be in his head.
Well, like everything we were saying about the fans and
exactly.
certain shots. Super short, but his description of Mickey Rourke. Rourke occupies the center of the film like a violent, unmade bed.
Wow.
I love that.
That's pretty good.
Angel Heart is a thriller and a horror movie, but most of all, it's an exuberant exercise in style in which Parker and his actors have fun taking it to the limit. That's sort of his in-closing take on it.
I just had a thought. I think what's missing from this movie for me is a kind of perceived bad guy. Because De Niro really isn't that. He's the person who hired him. He's sort of a different role. And that would be fine to kind of ultimately loop back around and be like, oh, he was the bad guy the whole time. But to have sort of a foil for the bad guy.
Why not just make that Johnny Angel as this off-screen,
I don't feel like it connects. I felt very disconnected to the Johnny Angel idea. And so, like, I think the dad, the black magic woman's dad, would have actually worked well as a foil.
Ethan Kruzmark.
Because he's sort of this rich, fat, living off of, like, people gambling, and, like, he's he's making
the gumbo.
The gumbo. So it's sort of like, almost like he's sort of appropriating the culture down there, and he feels like he could actually really be a good person for us to hate.
Yeah.
But we just don't get him.
Yeah.
So anyway. Side note. That's sort of not it, it's just a thought. It fits in this category, totally. Right?
Yeah.
Great.
More stuff on the casting. Oh yeah, if we knew Lisa Bonet from The Cosby Show, the director said, I didn't hire her because of The Cosby Show. I've never seen the show. I hired her because she was right for the role. And then she said, on preparing for the role, I did a lot of meditation and a lot of self-inquiry. I did some research on voodoo. My earnest endeavor was really to let go of all my inhibitions. It was really necessary for me to be able to let go of Lisa and let Epiphany take over. It was cool. But I just liked the director being like, I've never seen her in The Cosby Shows because she had a good audition.
Sir Alan William Parker doesn't watch The Cosby Show, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
He's too busy getting knighted.
Right. Since he had directed Fame, the Sir Alan, the voodoo scene had the same choreographer. I thought that was funny.
Wow.
Like that it had a choreographer and that it was the choreographer's Fame was kind of
cool.
The composer Trevor Jones, I know him from Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal.
Very nice.
That was fun. And then I have Christopher Nolan. As far as influences, he stated the film was a major influence on his 2000 film Memento. He said, quote, in terms of Memento, Alan Parker films such as Angel Heart and The Wall, which use very interesting editing techniques such as a fractured narrative, were big influence. That's cool. And then I think why we even watched this film at all, Tim, was, when stuff appears on lists. So in 2010, Wired magazine ranked the film at number 22 on their list of the 25 best horror films of all time. And in 2012, Mark Hughes, writing for Forbes, ranked Angel Heart as number 9 on his list of the top 10 best cult classic horror movies of all time. Lastly, Den of Geek writer Ryan Lambie ranked the film at a number 6 on his list of the top 20 underappreciated films of 1987.
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that last one again.
The top 20 underappreciated films of 1987.
What a specific list.
Right?
The 20 underappreciated. There were that many movies to be underappreciated?
Number 6.
What were appreciated that year?
Right, I know. I guess whatever. I mean, we'd have to look at it.
I like that it almost got an X rating.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's been restored, whatever was giving it that X rating.
It was 10 seconds of footage, so probably the sex scene.
Oh, so a big film for 1987 was Princess Bride.
Wow.
But underrated ones, number 20, we like Dolls. You know,
Jesus Christ.
Neo. All these films I haven't heard of, actually.
Oh,
The Hidden,
hit me with them.
Cherry 2000, Street Trash, Neo Tokyo.
Whoa.
Oh, Monster Squad.
Hey.
The Stepfather.
Yeah.
There is our other 87 film. Stage Fright. Yeah, 6, Angel Heart. Prick Up Your Ears.
I've heard of Prick Up Your Ears.
House of Games, bestseller. Oh, and the last one we know, Near Dark. But I mean, hey, underrated. I haven't heard of most of these.
Yeah, fair enough. Well,
there are a lot of movies always coming out.
That's for sure.
Anything else you have for things of note, Angel Heart at all?
Did it win anything?
I don't know, man.
Here we go. Ready? Nominated for Best Supporting Actor. These are Saturn Awards, Jupiter Awards, and Youth in Film Awards. Lisa Bonet won the 9th Youth in Film Awards, Best Young Female Superstar.
Great.
Good for her.
Should we move on then to RecommenDEADtions?
Sure.
All right.
That means I have to have one.
Then I'll go first.
Shit.
I will recommend Dead, a film I just watched last night, thanks to the Criterion streaming service, from 1968, starring Burt Lancaster, The Swimmer.
The Swimmer? Oh, I've never seen that.
I think you would...
I love Burt Lancaster.
I think you would really appreciate it, but also maybe really hate it. I don't know.
Great.
I think you should see it. It is cool. It's all about like, it has this similar almost, thing where it feels like the whole thing could be a dream or not reality, but it is sort of all this guy. It's Burt Lancaster, who's like 68. So he's older, but he's also sort of personifying like youth and holding on to youth and is like fitter than all of his friends.
Of course.
He's sort of, the movie just starts where he's like at this sort of pool of a friend's house, and it's like New York, I guess. I don't know. It looked place I'd never been, but it's all where like everything is forested, and you just sort of have these foresty paths and like horse meadows sort of separating big houses, like rich people houses.
Okay.
And he sort of plots out after his first swim, what I'm going to do? I'm going to swim. I found a way to swim home. I'm going to swim in like these 6 different pools of the this family to the that
Wow.
family to this community pool. And then I'll end up back home. And it's
Cool.
just sort of a lot to chew apart in it.
What year is it?
68.
Okay.
So I thought, a potent year as far as a lot of artistic sensibilities
like
just out in the world.
One of the most
and this was
intense
really
years
cool
in U.S. history.
Because it feels like it's that point where it's sort of coming off of the sort of traditional world of film, but then going into what we think of as new 60s, post 60s. But it was like, has a lot to do with this sort of his philosophy of, living life to the fullest and what that means in the face of, at the same time needing solidity or something grounded to also get anywhere, in life at the same time. And it's just a man at odds with that.
Cool.
And being confronted by it. And the style, like, it's just that super, I think you would really dig it as far as like when you have that the lens blurs and the Gaussian, and it's just all that good stuff.
It looks like it's got a little bit of sort of The Graduate aesthetic.
Yeah, it doesn't have the humor though. It's really devoid of humor.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And and also there's that's pervasive in it too. It's just this sense of like it's like when you have a dream that you sort of, oh, isn't this just all nice? But that there's something not about it. I I don't know how else to put it, but it just gave me a lot to think about. I really, really enjoyed it.
Great.
The Swimmer.
I was kind of cleaning and reorganizing a little bit, and I have this, I guess it's, what would you call the bookcase thing in the kitchen, or not kitchen, in the dining area, that like an armoire or something. A hutch. I don't know. So whatever, it's like a 6 foot tall, it's got some shelves and doors and whatever, and I don't know what to do with it. I keep moving it around. Nothing's in it. And so I ended up being like, well, I have all the, like, I don't really want to display all my DVDs, but I want access to them. So I just reorganize them and put them all in it. So that's what it's doing currently. It's just housing
Is
DVDs
your
and Blu-rays.
recommendations your piece of furniture?
Yes, no. While I'm doing this, I'm obviously looking at all of my movies. And I come across a movie that I haven't watched in a while that is incredible, also older, and also is kind of a horror film. And I would never initially have thought of it as that, but when you think about it, it fucking is. I mean, it's considered just a tragedy or whatever, but it's so fucking good.
What is it?
The performances are incredible and the directing is incredible. It's called A Place in the Sun. It's from 1951. So the basic story is that you've got this sort of working class dude, Montgomery Clift, and he's got kind of a trailer trash girlfriend, for lack of a better way to describe her.
All right.
Who is played by Shelley Winters, who we sort of think of as Shelley Winters when she was older and in the 80s and kind of overweight and more bossy and whatever. I mean, she's bossy as fuck in this, but like she's very young in it and she's incredible. And he ends up kind of getting lucked into a party where he meets super rich Elizabeth Taylor. And the story is him kind of trying to navigate between these two women. But then some serious shit goes down. And I'm not going to tell you what because it's so fucking good. And that's the horror of it. There is one scene in this movie that is magnificent.
Cool.
So I definitely recommend that.
They're all just trying to find their place in the sun.
Yeah, they are. It's George Stevens. George Stevens was like just incredible director back in the day. He did stuff like Shane and Giant, Diary of Anne Frank. So, he's the shit back then. Anyway, so that's mine. It's a fucking great movie.
Is it my turn to pull next week's film? You pulled Angel Heart. I
Did I?
pulled Goosebumps.
That sounds about right.
All right.
Ooh!
Right? I get so excited. We hope you're excited with us. Oh, Martyrs.
Finally!
The original.
Yes! Oh no. It's
Cool.
gonna be intense.
I feel like there's some good ones that were kind of, been waiting for a while.
Wow. Oh, sweet. We got to figure out how to get a hold of it.
Why?
Because I don't think it's very easy to find.
Oh.
The OG.
Cool. We'll
Banned
find
in
it.
a
We
bunch of
always
places or
do,
whatever.
except for when One Cut of the Dead wasn't available. We still have to watch that.
Yeah, should we do that as our 100th or something? Like, does that, to go back, does that make sense? Or is that too long from now?
We just got to talk about it.
How about our 75th? Oh no, we just passed it.
What about our 83rd?
I like it.
Okay. Great. Well, until next week for Martyrs, which maybe you've seen. You can find us at dismemberinghorror.com. That leads to our socials. We got an email address, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Click on those little, go to the website and click on the little tabs that look like a little bird. That one's for Twitter. The one that looks like a little camera. That one's for Instagram.
We're on Instagram more so. We post the posters. We post stills from the movie we watch. Mm-hmm. Our Twitter will be on it if you talk to us on it. But really, what our ask is, our big, huge, crazy, ridiculous ask of you, dear listener, if you enjoy this, tell a friend who might enjoy it too to listen. Send it to them.
Yeah.
That's it. Makes him happy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it. So in closing, thank you so much for listening.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.